Takes a while to actually start recording. There we go. Cool. Thank you all for coming. I believe it's going to be a short one. So let's begin with any meta discussion. I added just one point here, which is that I believe the 120 freeze is next week. So we're just in time to talk about any last items for this release. But I think we could potentially also start talking about stuff for next release for 121, given that it's going to be the freeze in no time. Any other meta stuff that we should cover? Cool. Then on to IDE editor tools. There's only one item on the agenda, which is mine. It's just a bit of an open question. Somebody recently opened an issue on one of my tools that rewrites code saying, hey, it doesn't work on files that use dot imports, as in, import dot, importing everything, all the names from one package. And my open question is, do people support those? I've never used them nor even seen them. So I'm just wondering whether tools try to support those or not.
So I know the common use case for those dot imports in the external test packages, like _test ones, where you import all these symbols from your tested package, so that you don't have to use it all the time. And I think sometimes it's also used with common testing frameworks like Testify. But whether it's a good or bad practice, it's a debatable thing. I know it's used.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would generally expect it to be supported, but not widely used. I've also seen it abused in testing frameworks, and I do consider that an abuse, but on the other hand, I would expect the tooling to work with it.
Yeah, that's a fair answer. I still think I'll have to support it, but it's kind of interesting that it's been years and only one person has asked about it, so I think that tells me it's not very commonly used.
I think Roger filed a go-to proposal to remove it, but I don't foresee that actually happening.
I know for sure that some of the standard library packages do that, so that's how I know.
Cool. Anything else for this section that isn't on the agenda? Cool. So moving on to Command Go, there's a couple. The first one is mine. I filed it, I believe, a few weeks back. We've talked about this on Slack a few times before, which is you can end up with a Go mod file that has more than 2 require sections, because right now the canonical form is up to 2 sections, one for direct and one for indirect requirements. And there are some ways to end up with more than those 2 sections, and Tidy doesn't rejoin them, so I think it should. That's the issue.
It intentionally does not today. That's mainly so that if projects have really complicated dependencies and they break them into chunks and add comments for them, or manage one block with some external tool or something, we don't mess with it. I don't think it's really fundamental that it does that, but on the other hand, changing it to do anything else seems like a lot of churn, and it's not clear to me that there's that much benefit to it. I don't know. It's if we change to do that, we would have to gate that on the Go version, and then there's another Go version switch and another. It would be kind of a complicated rollout.
Could it be an optional flag?
It could, but if it's an optional flag, then there's not really. I mean, the value to it is to clean stuff up for people automatically, and if they're going to do the cleanup, then they don't really need a flag for it.
Perhaps I'm missing something, but why does it need to be triggered by the Go version in GoMod?
Because GoMod Tidy, if you're contributing to a project and they use a particular Go version, then when you upgrade your toolchain and then author a pull request for this upstream project, you run GoMod Tidy, and then they're going to run GoMod Tidy, and it's annoying for everyone if there are extraneous changes. And so anything we do, even to the go.mod format, generally we gate under a Go language version change, unless it's straight up fixing a bug. And even then, if it's a bug that we expect a lot of people to encounter, we still gate it behind a Go version.
I thought in this case that wouldn't be needed, given that it's not like they're going to fight each other. It's like one will make a change that the other one will be fine with, right?
That's true. So that's possible, but you'd still end up with extraneous changes. Like you'd end up needing to request the contributor to do another PR to do the cleanup first, and then I don't know.
Okay. I think I'm happy to just leave that issue be for now and see if I run into this again, because I've run into it 3 times, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen again. Maybe it's not going to happen again, and then there's no point in keeping talking about it. And I see the pods commented on what I mentioned before about dot imports. Avo, I forgot about Avo. Thanks. The next one is Brian's, so go ahead.
Yeah, so Michael has been working on a big stack of changes to remove the precompiled .a files from the standard library. And Russ has also been working on changing a couple of packages in the standard library so that they can now be built without .a files by using libc instead of Sego, I think. And so the net combination of those is that we're not sure exactly what the final state of the 1.20 release is going to be yet, but it's looking like probably either nothing at all will ship with .a files, or possibly Linux will ship with a few .a files for the race detector and for Sego packages, and nothing else will ship with .a files. So there is a Go debug that reverts that to the previous behavior for tools that really have hard baked in the assumptions about having .a files in GoRoot. But for the most part, we expect things to just load packages from the build cache, and that means that the Go distribution is going to be a lot smaller too. So not shipping extraneous things. Yay.
I mean, one side effect of this is that if you use the Xtools version of the GC importer, you need to be sure to upgrade your version of Xtools.
You just made me think. I thought GC importer was in the standard library. Are there 2 of them?
I think there's actually
There are more than 2.
Oh God!
So
I just realized that.
So the number of the proliferation of importers has been a real pain, particularly with all the changes to the export data version related to generics. There are 2 in the standard library, 1 in the compiler and 1 in Go internal GC importer. And then there is 1 in Xtools, and there used to be a couple others outside of Xtools, but I think at least one of those projects, I think Static Check had its own and switched to using the Xtools GC importer because the churn was too much.
So I think I only care about the importable ones because I have a couple of tools using the standard library one, and I guess I'm wondering if I should switch over to the Xtools one. Or rather, what is the difference between them besides the release schedule?
The difference is that the Xtools one supports older export data formats. So if you don't have a need to switch, I wouldn't.
I guess I'm just surprised that nobody's run into problems with Go versions. Interesting.
Well, the sort of the standard library export data importer is compatible with the standard library compiler export data. So if you're importing export data produced by the compiler, you should use the standard library one. But if you are producing your own export data, then you would have to, there is no standard library export data writer. You would have to use the Xtools export data writer, at which point you should also use the Xtools export data reader.
Okay, cool. Apologies for the tangent. And something I wanted to mention about Brian's comment of .a files is that I think this is going to improve third-party packaging of Go as well, because I found out like a year ago that Arch Linux shipped Go with like a bunch of extra files that weren't actually necessary, like lots of I can't remember what the directory was called, but there's all the .a files, and there was also like a build cache-like directory that was left behind. So deleting those meant like half the size was dropped. So if that kind of stuff happens by default, it's probably going to be for the best. Cool. Anything else for Command Go? And on to miscellaneous. This one's mine, and I forgot the link. My bad. So just give me a second. So that is the link. So the question is, we talked about this before, which is the time zone data package in the standard library, which right now generates uses Go generate to generate a Go file that adds quite a lot of strings to generate one big blob, and that's fine. But it also makes tools really slow because they have to parse all those additions of strings into a tree. And we discussed multiple options, and I think the one we settled with was Ross's idea of having command dist generate a similar file that is just one big string blob as opposed to additions of strings. So if we're still okay with this, are we happy with sending a CL for like 121? I could do that, for example.
I think probably you'll need to talk with Ian Lance Taylor or Russ about that.
Yeah, okay, that's probably a good idea. I just wanted to flag it before I write any code, because messages were shared in multiple threads by different people at different times, and I just want to make sure that everybody agrees about what is the right course of action. But I think all the solutions are kind of similar, so I don't really care which one we go for, as long as it's a solution. Cool. I think that's it in terms of agenda items. A couple of people joined halfway through. Anything else that they want to add? Cool. I do actually have one. Oh, no worries, Alan. If you have anything to add, you can type it into chat, and maybe we can talk about it as well. As far as what are people working on going forward, I have a bit of a question to ask the room, which is, how do people debug things on Mac? I've got a tool that has a nasty build reproducibility bug that only happens in Mac, and the only way I can reproduce it is on CI with GitHub Actions. But if debugging that is kind of slow because I have to trigger a build and wait 5 or 10 minutes. So what do people do without actually buying an Apple machine? How do people do that? Yeah. Go modes. I guess using the Go modes for stuff that isn't the Go project wouldn't be right.
Yeah, please don't use those for things that aren't the Go project.
It's okay. I don't have access, and if I ask for access, it's going to be very obvious now, right? Cool. I think that's it then in terms of the agenda. For the next session, I'm happy to run it again. As far as when, I think we should jump over the holidays because we're going for like a month and a half between calls. So how about mid-January, like January 11th? And this would be 4 p.m. UTC, London time again. Cool. That's it then. I will set it up and I will upload the recording. And thanks all for coming. Have a good rest of your day, evening, etc. See ya.